morning, everyone. I remember a time when, before the COVID pandemic started, my family and I would visit my maternal grandmother in Malaysia every year during the December holidays. So usually when people get off a plane, they would be so tired, they would want to go home and get a rest as soon as possible, right? Well, I wasn't like that. I was looking forward to the 2-hour car ride from the airport back to my grandmother's house. What's so special about this simple car ride? Well, imagine this. You're stuck in the back of the car with 3 other people, and it's a really tight fit considering all the luggage that you brought. It's cramped, uncomfortable, and outside the window, there's nothing much to see except miles and miles of plantation and just trucks driving along the highway. So what exactly keeps you awake and excited? 我甲你讲吼，迄个上会行，迄个真赤某一颗，哇，嘛哪会知伊外口有小山咧？ Did anybody understand what I just said? Hopefully you did, but if you didn't, here's a quick English translation. Hey, let me tell you this. You know that, whose son, the one who really loves his wife? Who would have expected him to have an affair outside? Sharing a language means we are the same. Is this really true? Well, when I think of it, most of us here are probably multilinguals, right? That means we speak 2 or more languages, and often that would be your native language along with English. But some of us don't really master our native languages on the same level as English. And why is that? Well, we don't really get the same opportunity to study our native languages as we do for English in school. I myself never received a formal education in Mandarin Chinese until I came to Singapore recently, which was about 4 years ago. Also, Hokkien is not really offered as a subject in conventional schools. When I asked my mom to teach me Hokkien phrases or translate certain words into Hokkien, she would just turn to me and laugh and be like, "Why do you even need that?" What she means is, why do you want to learn a language that has no value? This isn't the case for English, and this is because English has something which other languages lack, and that's power. English is something that we learn in school, and most of the time, we prioritize English over our native languages. This story may sound familiar to many multilinguals here. In some of my university linguistics classes, my professor would ask, "Oh, what languages do you know?" And obviously our first answer would be, "Oh yeah, English." And then the Chinese students would go, "Oh yeah, I know a bit of Mandarin Chinese, but it's not on the same level as my English, you see." "Oh, great," the professor would say. "Then do you know any Chinese dialects, perhaps?" Then you will suddenly see the hands that are raised in the air go a bit shakier, or they will lower down to half-mast. And most of the students, myself included, would be like, well, I can kind of understand my own dialect a bit, but I really don't speak it. Now compare this embarrassment and shame that we feel to the pride that we feel when we speak English. Because unlike English, our native languages lack power. So what do? When I forget certain words in Hokkien, I will feel like there's this frog stuck in my throat, and then all that comes out of my mouth is embarrassed, ugly, pitiful croaking. When an auntie approaches me on the MRT to ask for directions in Hokkien, all that I can offer her is this shabby Mandarin sentence with just a pinch of Hokkien vocabulary. And then when I try to connect with my family using Hokkien, I can't really speak. I can just sit there quietly and listen to what they say. Isn't it ironic that sharing English has allowed us to connect with one another, but has actually cut off our connection with some of our family members and even the older generations? To use a colloquial term, I think most of us here are losers. Sure, we've gained power, we've gained prestige, we've gained access to resources like knowledge, but what have we lost in exchange? Today, I propose that we look at languages as if they were human beings so that we can make a case for saving some of them that are fading away. So this question on the screen, are languages created equal? You might tell me, oh, isn't this a no-brainer? All languages are fundamentally languages, just like how we are all human beings. But I can't just stand here and lie to you and say that, oh, yeah, languages are all exactly the same. No, that's not true. Let's look at some familiar examples. So on the screen here, you see two Chinese characters that literally mean Chinese characters, and the letters A. Well, they clearly look different. Languages can be written in many different scripts, and they are not restricted to just the Latin alphabet. The internal structure of their words, which is morphology, or the structure of their sentences, which is syntax, can also differ greatly. So for example, if you think about it, we don't really make past tense forms or plural forms of words in Chinese like we do in English, right? In terms of phonology, which is the sound systems of languages, well, not all languages share the same vowel and consonant inventories. One famous example that I can think of is this language with an unusual sound of clicking sounds like, it's known as the Bantu language, which is Xhosa, and it's spoken in South Africa. Moving on, as multilinguals, sometimes we switch between our languages, and this is known as code switching. But why do we do this? Well, it can be for a social purpose, such as drawing in-group and out-group boundaries. So we want to say that, oh, we are the same, but we are different, that kind of thing. What else? Well, sometimes we also change or erase our accents just to fit in, don't you think? Lastly, languages do belong to different families, just like how humans do. And fun fact, the 4 main languages of Singapore actually belong to 4 different language families. English is Indo-European, and then Mandarin Chinese is Sino-Tibetan, Tamil is Dravidian, and last but not least, Malay is actually Austronesian. So if all the terms that I just said mean absolutely nothing to you, don't worry. The point that I'm trying to make is that by studying the relationships between these languages and categorizing them into different language families, we can thereby learn about the various histories that brought the speakers of these languages to where they are today. Now that I've outlined all these cool features about your favorite languages, well, what if I told you that one day your language goes poof, it disappears? You can no longer refer to your favorite local food by its native name. You can't jam to emo Chinese songs from the 2000s on Spotify while studying. You can't express New Year greetings or blessings to your relatives. And importantly, scholars can no longer infer which tribes traded with whom and where did they migrate, because they can't track these paths via language changes anymore. At that point, I wouldn't just feel like a loser, I would feel lost. There's nothing connecting me to a greater community or a sense of identity in this very vast world. Okay. Wait, let's backtrack a little. It's not doomsday yet. What is important now is how we treat our precious languages. Have you ever heard of the terms first, second, or even third language? Well, I'm pretty sure all of us are familiar with how we label sometimes English as first language, so you will know that as English A, and sometimes our mother tongue or native language would be called second language. Doesn't that have some sort of connotation of inferiority, do you think? Languages are often stereotyped, just like people, and these stereotypes can be very harmful. How often have you heard things like, oh, French is such a romantic language, but then you hear, oh, Hokkien is so unrefined, it should stay in the hawker centers where it belongs. Well, these stereotypes can really affect people's perceptions and attitudes of these languages. And then in turn, this influences how nations control policies on languages which will promote or erase them. Let me tell you a not very well-kept secret. So what is the difference between a language and a dialect? There's actually no difference. A language is just a dialect with an army and a navy. So linguistically, the Chinese dialects that we see in Singapore can actually all be considered separate languages. What differs is that dialects lack the social and political recognition that languages have. These misconceptions do have significant repercussions. So let's look at how we treat languages becomes how we treat people. Let's look at our neighbors in Malaysia. So in recent decades, there has been this sticky situation where some of the languages of the Orang Asli, who are the natives, have been pushed out in favor of the national language Malay. So their languages are seen as somehow uncivilized, even though their languages have so much cultural and linguistic uniqueness to offer. The rich lexicon of expressives can demonstrate things such as the sight and sounds of the forest in such ways that us urbanized people simply cannot. But because of this stigma of uncivilized languages, the older Orang Asli no longer try to transmit their languages to the younger generations. And because humanity's progress only accelerates, languages all over the world are dying today. Wait. Why should I care about an obsolete language dying out when there are other things to care about, like climate change, poverty, war? Well, I hope that the things that I've talked about and shared today will at least convince you a little bit about how important languages can be to humankind. Losing any language can be a great blow to humanity, as it leads to the disappearance of a great deal of knowledge, history, and culture. Let's look at this from my point of view. So as a linguist, I want to study these languages carefully because I want to document all of these linguistic features that will help me understand general linguistics as a whole. But on a personal level, I just want to connect to my family. I want to speak to them. I want to have a tangible symbol of my connection to them, as well as people who have a shared history with me. Wow, look at this wonderful artistic depiction of Peranakan culture, of which my family is actually a part of. But these elements, objects, and symbols are no longer present in our home today. What's even worse is that we don't even speak the language of the Peranakans, which is Baba Malay. But I don't want all of this to be forgotten by our children or the children of our children. So now I ask you this. Why should we care about other languages? Why should we care about other people? Well, we are just a very tiny dot in this very big earth, but we are not alone. So let's make sure we don't lose each other. Thank you.